In this video, I wish to present that Star Wars, amongst many other movies, retell the Christian story of Christ, but from a warped satanic perspective, where God and Christ are the evil two villains, while Satan and his descendants are the good guys, the heroes, the saviors of the world or galaxy. So have a listen and make up your own mind. So if we start with the basic premise of Star Wars, in the original trilogy and prequels at least, it all centers around an evil tyrannical emperor ruling the galaxy, whilst a group of heroic selfless rebels resist him and are attempting to free the galaxy. This is basically a depraved Satan's view of God ruling over Earth and being an evil tyrant, while Satan they are heroically the rebellion, putting up a fight to save everyone. So to tie it together, I will briefly explain the characters and who they represent. The main bad guy in the series is certainly the Emperor, aka Senator Sheev Palpatine. He represents Yahweh, our God. Palpatine despises all non-humans, and God of course was not a big fan of fallen angels mating with animals or Adam kind either. He's depicted from Satan's perspective as being completely evil. Darth Vader represents Christ, the chosen one, born in a miraculous way, twisted and evil as Obi-Wan explains. That would be Satan's point of view, of course. Although in Christianity we know that God and Christ are one and the same, in this story they are represented as two individual characters, and more on that later. Padme, she was once the bride of Anakin who became Darth Vader. She represents the children of Israel, the bride of Christ or God. Anakin is trying to keep her alive, even keep her alive forever, essentially Christ redeeming and saving Israel from death forever. They are both trying to save their wife. Luke Skywalker represents a son of God, i.e. any Christian. He will later have a major impact changing Christ or Vader's mind, but we will get onto that later as well in the story. Lastly, the Jedi Council. These represent Satan's people, shall we say, who have always opposed Christ right from the beginning of time. Of course they are depicted as good, peace-loving and selfless. In reality, they are completely evil. If we move into the plot, what is most important is the main scenes that direct the story. We will begin where Palpatine, God, has finally defeated the Jedi Council and has executed Order 66. This represents Jerusalem being destroyed in about 70 AD, where Christ or God got revenge on the Sadducees and Pharisees for rejecting him and killing him, hence the name Revenge of the Sith or Revenge of Christ. The 2000 years since Christ today is represented as just 20 years in Star Wars, with Vader at the forefront, Christ leading legions of stormtroopers, Christians all around the galaxy who look just like him, Christians with Christ's Holy Spirit dwelling within. They massacre any resistance, conquer whole worlds and tyrannize the galaxy. This is essentially depicting Europe accepting Christianity, ending all other religions, the Crusades, and of course it's depicted as the Dark Times. Just like now we are taught in history class, Christian Europe was the Dark Times. So deep down, from Satan's perspective, they know they're doomed, but hey, this is a movie so they can change the ending. In this series of events, Luke Skywalker, who can be any Christian, convinces Darth Vader, that's Christ, that he was wrong all along, and that his way is not the righteous way. Vader, Christ, turns against Palpatine, God, and destroys him, later dying himself. Remember, these are deranged minds, and the outcome is the rulers of this world are left to their own devices, unchallenged without God, who has destroyed himself after first realizing that Satan was right all along. However, in reality, a different outcome awaits them, the great day, the lake of fire. Now, the great duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan. This represents Christ versus his enemies. In the movie, Anakin, Christ, has sided with Palpatine, God, obviously. Now pay special close attention to the dialogue, remember from a warped satanic perspective. So Anakin is whining that Obi-Wan has turned his wife against him. This is Christ, a God, whining that Israel, his people, his bride, have turned away from him. Obi-Wan counters, it's all his own fault. It's all because of his anger and lust for power. It is because of God's flawed laws, harsh treatment of the children of Israel, and his selfish desire to make himself ruler, king over them and the whole world that has caused them to turn away from him. Now Anakin counters, he sees through the lies of the Jedi. Christ always saw straight through the lies of his enemies, but here he is depicted as a crazed, power-hungry maniac. Obi-Wan's allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. We all know how Satan loved their sham democracy and rigged elections. Anakin says, if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Now George Lucas of course couldn't use a direct quote from the Bible, that would be way too obvious, but it's essentially what Christ said, he that is not with me is against me. Finally, only a Sith deals in absolutes, I will do what I must. Of course God's law is absolute, it is sovereign. Only Satan rebels against it. After the battle, Anakin is horrifically maimed, having now lost 4 limbs, which represents the nail going through Christ's limbs, ultimately the crucifixion. Obi-Wan, the enemies or Satan didn't want to do it, but they had to because Anakin Christ was evil. Had Christ only seen things their way, maybe it could have all been avoided. Rather than Christ's resurrection being depicted as miraculous and glorious, we instead get a warped perspective. Anakin is put back together as a machine in pain and agony. This is a complete mockery of Christ. So why do all the Sith, or at least the majority, have these evil yellow eyes? Well, this is simply a reference to Revelations 19:12, where Christ on his second coming appears with eyes like a flame of fire. So this is represented in the movie literally as flaming looking Sith eyes. What about Anakin's name? Why did George pick such a weird name for the main character? Well, if you split it into 2, you get Anna and Kin. Anna in Hebrew means God is gracious, or simply grace, whilst Kin means your kindred, your kinsman, i.e. your race. So if we bring it all together, you get race of grace. The Israelites are the race of grace. They are saved by Christ no matter what, as they are under his grace. George was pretty sneaky here. Also, it could just be a coincidence, but the actor Hayden Christensen, what are the chances of his last name actually being Christ? What about the whole Plagueis story? It's become one gigantic meme, almost as popular as a certain other Obi-Wan meme. But anyways, the whole he could save others but not himself, it's straight from the Bible. It's exactly what the people said to Christ after healing people and raising them from the dead. During the crucifixion, he could save others, they said, but he can't save himself. Kind of ironic, wouldn't you say? So it's nothing original from George, just a verse made into a little backstory. Of course, Star Wars is just one movie, and there's many more which do the exact same thing. Thanks for watching, praise Yahweh, and hail Christ.